The air in the barn hung thick with laughter and music, but Olivia Edwards felt utterly alone among the crowd. The fiddle's melody swirled around her like autumn leaves caught in a breeze, yet she remained rooted to her spot against the rough-hewn wall, watching as couples twirled across the wooden floor. Her fingers nervously smoothed the fabric of her cornflower blue dress, the one she'd spent 3 weeks' savings on, only to be abandoned by her escort mere minutes after arriving. The year was 1875, and in Willow Creek, Arizona Territory, a woman alone at a social gathering might as well have branded "desperate" across her forehead. She considered slipping away unnoticed when the crowd parted like the Red Sea. Through the gap, a tall figure moved with purpose, boots striking the planked floor with measured steps, shoulders squared beneath a dark duster coat. Olivia's breath caught as the stranger's gaze locked with hers from across the room. He wasn't like the local boys with their awkward movements and uncertain smiles. This man moved with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what he wanted. The cowboy crossed the room and took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, warm against her skin. "Madam," he said, his voice as deep and smooth as river stones. "I believe they're playing our song." Olivia blinked up at him, momentarily speechless. His eyes were the color of a summer storm, intense and captivating. "I don't believe we've met," she managed to say, her voice barely audible above the music. "Nathan Blackett," he replied with a slight tip of his hat, "new foreman at the Rocking M. And you would be?" "Olivia Edwards," she answered, her heart thumping wildly in her chest. "Schoolteacher." His lips curved into a smile that transformed his weathered face. "Well, Miss Edwards, would you care to dance? Or would you prefer to continue holding up this wall all evening?" There was something in his tone, not mockery, but a gentle teasing that made her smile despite herself. "I suppose the wall could manage without my assistance for one dance." As he led her onto the floor, Olivia felt the weight of curious stares. Nathan seemed oblivious to them as he positioned himself before her, one hand respectfully at her waist, the other clasping hers. The fiddle player struck up a lively reel, and before she could protest that she wasn't much of a dancer, they were moving. "I haven't seen you at one of these gatherings before," Olivia said, trying to focus on conversation rather than the proximity of this stranger. "Just rode into town last week," Nathan replied, guiding her effortlessly through a turn. "Mr. Montgomery hired me on after his last foreman took ill. Figured it was time to introduce myself to the community." "And you chose to do so by rescuing a wallflower?" she asked, arching an eyebrow. He laughed, a rich sound that sent an unexpected warmth through her. "Is that what you think?" "No, Miss Edwards. I chose to dance with the most intriguing woman in the room." Olivia nearly missed a step. "Intriguing? Sir? You don't even know me." "That's what makes you intriguing," he countered smoothly. "Everyone else here seems to know each other's business going back generations. But you were watching them all with those thoughtful eyes, like you were reading a story no one else could see." She felt a blush warm her cheeks. "I'm just the schoolteacher." "Never met a just anything in my life," Nathan replied. "Especially not a schoolteacher. Most educated person in any frontier town, responsible for the future of the community, nothing just about that." The dance ended too quickly, and when Nathan released her, Olivia felt a curious sense of loss. But instead of returning her to her wall, he offered his arm. "Would you care for some punch, Miss Edwards?" She hesitated only briefly before accepting. "Thank you, Mr. Blackett." As they moved toward the refreshment table, Olivia spotted Thomas Jenkins, her abandoned escort, watching them with narrowed eyes. The young banker's son had invited her with great ceremony, only to disappear with Lucille Peterson, the milliner's daughter, at the first opportunity. "Friend of yours?" Nathan asked, following her gaze. "Hardly," Olivia replied, lifting her chin slightly. Just a reminder of why I was holding up that wall when you found me. Nathan's expression darkened momentarily. His loss, he said simply, handing her a cup of punch. They found a quiet corner where the music wasn't quite so deafening. So, Miss Edwards, what brings a clearly educated woman to a frontier town like Willow Creek? Most Eastern ladies I've known would consider this place the edge of civilization. Olivia sipped her punch before answering. My father was a professor at a women's college in Boston. He believed in education for all, particularly women. When he passed last year, I decided to honor his memory by bringing that education to places that needed it most. I'm sorry about your father, Nathan said, and the genuine sympathy in his voice touched her. Thank you. She studied him over the rim of her cup. And you? You don't strike me as the typical cowhand. Something flickered in his eyes. Caution, perhaps. What makes you say that? Your speech, for one thing. And you carry yourself differently. He chuckled. Observant. I suppose I'm not typical in some ways. Spent some time back east myself. Went to university in Pennsylvania for a spell. Yet you ended up a cowboy in Arizona territory, she prompted. The war changed things, he said simply, and she understood he meant the Civil War, which had ended a decade ago but still cast long shadows. Some men found they couldn't go back to what they were before. Before she could inquire further, Thomas Jenkins appeared at her elbow, swaying slightly with the effects of whatever he'd been drinking from a flask outside. Livy, he slurred, ignoring Nathan completely. Been looking all over for you. Ready for that dance you promised me? Olivia tensed. I made no such promise. Thomas, and I believe you already found a dance partner this evening. Thomas frowned, his boyish face flushing. Come on now, don't be like that. The lady seems disinclined to dance with you. Nathan interrupted, his voice still conversational but with an edge of steel beneath. Thomas finally seemed to notice him, looking Nathan up and down with the particular disdain of the wealthy for those they consider beneath them. This isn't your concern, Cowboy. Miss Edwards came with me. And yet, you left her standing alone, Nathan observed. Poor manners where I come from. Thomas drew himself up, though he still stood several inches shorter than Nathan. Do you know who my father is? Can't say that I do, Nathan replied evenly. But I know who you are, a man who doesn't keep his commitments. That tells me all I need to know. Several people nearby had stopped to watch the confrontation. Olivia felt mortification creeping up her neck. As the schoolteacher, she was expected to comport herself with dignity at all times. Being the center of a scene at a public gathering could jeopardize her standing in the community. Please, she said quietly. This isn't necessary. Nathan glanced at her, read something in her expression, and nodded slightly. You're right, Miss Edwards. He turned back to Thomas. Sir, I believe you've had a bit too much refreshment this evening. Perhaps you should find your way home. Thomas opened his mouth to retort, but was interrupted by the arrival of Sheriff Mason, a grizzled man with shrewd eyes. Everything all right here, folks? Just a misunderstanding, Sheriff, Nathan said smoothly. Mr. Jenkins was just leaving to clear his head. The sheriff took in Thomas's flushed face and unsteady stance. That sounds like a fine idea. Come along, son. I'll walk you out. Thomas shot a venomous look at Nathan, but allowed the sheriff to guide him away. Whispers rippled through the onlookers before they gradually returned to their dancing and conversations. Olivia exhaled shakily. I should probably go. This has become complicated. Let me walk you home, Nathan offered. It's the least I can do after contributing to your discomfort. She wanted to refuse, to insist she could manage alone. But the thought of walking the dark streets with Thomas possibly waiting didn't appeal. That would be kind, thank you. They slipped out the side door of the barn into the cool night air. Stars scattered across the sky like diamond dust, and a half moon cast silver light over the small town. Olivia breathed deeply, grateful for the quiet after the noise and tension inside. "I live at Mrs. Holloway's boarding house," she said. "It's not far." They walked in companionable silence for a few moments before Nathan spoke. "I apologize if I overstepped back there. I didn't mean to cause a scene." "You didn't," Olivia assured him. "Thomas did that all on his own." She hesitated. "Though I am curious why you asked me to dance in the first place. You could have chosen anyone." Nathan glanced at her, his expression thoughtful in the moonlight. "Like I said, you looked interesting, and—" He paused. "The truth is, I saw what happened when you arrived. Saw that fellow abandon you for the girl in the yellow dress. Didn't seem right." Olivia's steps faltered. "So it was pity?" "No," he said firmly, stopping to face her. "It was admiration. You stood there with your head high, not running off, not making a fuss. Dignity like that is rare, Miss Edwards." She studied his face, searching for any sign of insincerity, but found none. "Thank you for saying so, Mr. Blackett." They continued walking, turning onto the street where the boarding house stood with its neat white fence and curtained windows. Light glowed from the front parlor where Mrs. Holloway likely waited up for her lodgers. "Here we are," Olivia said, stopping at the gate. Nathan removed his hat, holding it respectfully. "Miss Edwards, I enjoyed our dance very much. Perhaps I could call on you properly sometime? Sunday after church, maybe?" The request was so unexpected that Olivia momentarily lost her words. Proper gentlemen didn't typically court schoolteachers, especially not handsome cowboys who could surely have their pick of ladies. Yet there was something about Nathan Blackett that intrigued her. Something in those storm-gray eyes that spoke of depths and stories untold. "I would like that," she finally replied. His smile in response was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "Until Sunday, then." He gave a slight bow, replaced his hat, and turned to leave. Olivia watched him stride away, his tall figure gradually dissolving into the shadows. Only when he had disappeared completely did she open the gate and hurry up the path to the boarding house, where Mrs. Holloway would undoubtedly be waiting with questions about her early return from the dance. What she couldn't possibly explain was the curious feeling that something significant had just begun, all because a cowboy had crossed a room and taken her hand. Sunday dawned clear and bright, the autumn air crisp with promise. Olivia took extra care with her appearance, selecting her best dress, a forest green affair with modest lace at the collar and cuffs. She pinned her chestnut hair in a simple but elegant style, allowing a few curls to frame her face. Mrs. Holloway eyed her knowingly at breakfast. "You're looking particularly fine this morning, Miss Edwards. Any special reason?" "Just Sunday best, Mrs. Holloway," Olivia replied, though she couldn't quite meet the older woman's shrewd gaze. The landlady hummed, not fooled for a moment. "Would this have anything to do with the tall gentleman who escorted you home Friday night?" News traveled fast in Willow Creek. "Mr. Blackett was kind enough to walk me home, yes." "Montgomery's new foreman," Mrs. Holloway mused, buttering her toast. "They say he was some kind of cavalry officer during the war. Educated, too." Olivia's curiosity piqued. "Do they?" He didn't mention that. "Modest men seldom do," Mrs. Holloway replied with the wisdom of her 60 years. "Unlike some who can't stop talking about themselves?" She gave Olivia a significant look. "A refreshing change from young Mr. Jenkins, I'd wager." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "It was just a dance and a walk home, Mrs. Holloway." The landlady smiled. "Of course, dear. Now eat your eggs before they get cold." Church service that morning seemed interminable. Olivia sat with the other unmarried ladies, trying to focus on Reverend Phillips's sermon about patience being a virtue, while surreptitiously scanning the congregation. She spotted Nathan toward the back, standing straight and attentive, his Sunday clothes, simple but immaculate. When their eyes met briefly, a small smile played at his lips before he politely returned his attention to the sermon. After the final hymn, Olivia found herself surrounded by her young students, all eager to tell her about their week. She listened patiently, all too aware of Nathan waiting at a respectful distance, hat in hand. When the children finally dispersed, he approached. "Miss Edwards," he greeted her with a slight bow. "You look lovely today." "Thank you, Mr. Blackett," she replied, conscious of the curious glances from townsfolk lingering on the church steps. "You clean up rather well yourself." He grinned. "High praise indeed. I was thinking, if you're amenable, we might take a walk by the creek. It's a fine day for it." "That sounds pleasant," she agreed. They strolled away from the church, following the path that led to Willow Creek, the town's namesake. The trees along the bank were turning golden and crimson, their leaves occasionally drifting down to float on the water's surface. "How are you finding Willow Creek so far?" Olivia asked, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled between them. "It's a good town," Nathan replied. "Hard-working people, mostly honest. The kind of place a man could put down roots if he were so inclined." "And are you so inclined, Mr. Blackett?" He glanced at her, those gray eyes thoughtful. "I've been moving for a long time, Miss Edwards, since the war ended. But lately, I've been thinking it might be time to stop wandering." "What made you wander in the first place?" she asked, genuinely curious about this man who seemed both open and mysterious at once. Nathan was quiet for a moment, watching the creek flow past. "After Appomattox, I went home to Pennsylvania only to find there wasn't much home left to go to. My father had died. The family business was gone. My mother had remarried and moved to Chicago." He shrugged. "So I headed west, tried my hand at different things, mining, scouting for the army, ranch work. Found I had a knack for horses and cattle. And ended up in Arizona," Olivia finished for him. "And ended up in Arizona," he agreed with a small smile, "though I'm beginning to think that might have been fortunate timing." The implication hung in the air between them, delicate as cobwebs. Olivia looked away, focusing on a pair of butterflies dancing above the wild flowers at the creek's edge. "My journey was somewhat similar, though not nearly as adventurous. After father died, our house in Boston went to a distant cousin. I had my education, but little else." "So you came west to teach," Nathan said. "That takes courage." "Or desperation," she replied with a wry smile. "I don't believe that for a minute," he countered. "I've met desperate people. They don't cross half a continent alone to educate strangers' children. That takes conviction." They found a fallen log by the water and sat, maintaining a proper distance between them. From here, they could see the creek winding away toward the mountains, sun glinting off its surface like scattered gold coins. "May I ask you something, Mr. Blackett?" Olivia ventured after a moment. "Nathan, please," he said, "and you may ask me anything." She hesitated, then decided on directness. "Why did you really ask me to dance? The truth." He studied her face, seeming to consider his words carefully. "When I walked into that barn and saw you standing there alone, you reminded me of something my father used to say. He told me, 'Son, look for the quiet ones, the ones who don't need to be the center of attention. They're usually the ones with the most interesting thoughts.'" Nathan smiled slightly. "And I was curious about what thoughts might be behind those observant eyes of yours." "And have you discovered anything interesting?" she asked, unable to hide her smile. "Just enough to know I'd like to discover more," he replied honestly. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the gentle gurgle of the creek and distant bird calls. It was unlike any courtship conversation Olivia had experienced before, direct yet respectful, lacking the usual platitudes and flatteries that so often masked true intentions. "I should return you to Mrs. Holloway's before she sends out a search party," Nathan said eventually, standing and offering his hand to help her up. Olivia accepted his assistance, noting the gentle strength in his grip. "She is rather protective of her boarders." "As she should be," he replied. "A good woman looking out for those in her care speaks well of a community." They walked back toward town, discussing books they had read. He was partial to Dickens, while she preferred Austen, exchanging observations about Willow Creek, and sharing stories of their previous lives that seemed both recent and distant at once. At the boarding house gate, Nathan paused. "Miss Edwards, Olivia, would you allow me to call on you again? Perhaps for dinner at the hotel restaurant this Friday evening?" Dinner at the hotel was a significant step beyond a Sunday walk. It was a public declaration of courtship intentions. Olivia felt a flutter of something between excitement and anxiety. "I would be delighted, Nathan." His smile was warm. "Until Friday, then." She watched him walk away again, struck by how much had changed in just 2 days. On Friday night, she had been abandoned and humiliated at a barn dance. Now, she found herself looking forward to the week ahead, with an anticipation she hadn't felt in a very long time. Inside, Mrs. Holloway was arranging flowers in the parlor with suspicious casualness. "Had a nice walk, did you?" "Very nice, thank you," Olivia replied, heading for the stairs. "He seems a proper gentleman," the landlady commented. "Though Thomas Jenkins was in quite a state yesterday, going on about how you've been stolen away by some drifting cowhand." Olivia paused on the bottom step. "Mr. Jenkins forfeited any claim to my attention when he abandoned me at the dance. And Mr. Blackett is hardly a drifter. He's the foreman at Rockingham." Mrs. Holloway's eyes twinkled. "I didn't say I agreed with Thomas, dear. Just reporting the gossip. Small towns run on it, you know." "Well, there's plenty of fodder for them now," Olivia said with resignation. "Mr. Blackett has invited me to dinner at the hotel on Friday." The landlady's eyebrows rose appreciatively. "Has he indeed? Well, well, I'd say that calls for your blue silk, the one with the pearl buttons." Olivia laughed despite herself. "Mrs. Holloway, are you encouraging this courtship?" "My dear," the older woman said seriously, "I've watched you these past 6 months, working yourself to the bone teaching those children, never complaining, never asking for anything for yourself. If a good man wants to take you to dinner, I say let him." With that simple blessing, Olivia felt something in her chest lighten. Perhaps it was too soon to hope, but for the first time since arriving in Willow Creek, she felt the possibility of a future beyond her classroom walls. The days leading up to Friday crawled by with agonizing slowness. Olivia threw herself into her teaching, but her students quickly noticed her distraction. "Miss Edwards, you've got that dreamy look again," observed 10-year-old Emma Johnson during arithmetic lessons on Thursday afternoon. "I beg your pardon?" Olivia replied, startled from her thoughts, which had, admittedly, been drifting to a pair of storm-gray eyes. "Pa says you've got a beau," piped up Billy Thompson from the back row. "Says it's that new foreman from Rockingham who scared off drunk Mr. Jenkins at the dance." A chorus of giggles swept through the classroom. Olivia felt heat rising to her face but maintained her composure. "That is quite enough, children. Mr. Blackett is a friend. Now, who can tell me the answer to the problem on the board?" The children settled down, but Olivia could see the speculation in their eyes. News traveled alarmingly fast in Willow Creek if the children knew. Then everyone knew. She would need to be particularly circumspect in her behavior. As she dismissed class that afternoon, Olivia was surprised to find Nathan waiting outside the schoolhouse, leaning against a hitching post with casual grace. Several students cast knowing glances between their teacher and the cowboy as they scattered homeward. "Mr. Blackett," She greeted him with formal propriety, conscious of the townspeople passing by. "This is unexpected." "Miss Edwards," he returned with a slight tip of his hat. "Hope you don't mind the intrusion. I was in town picking up supplies for the ranch and thought I might walk you home." "That's very kind," she replied, gathering her books and papers. "Though it appears you've now provided the town gossips with fresh material." He fell into step beside her, taking the stack of books from her arms despite her mild protest. "Small towns," he said with a shrug. "People will talk regardless. Might as well give them something worth talking about." "Is that your philosophy in general, Mr. Blackett?" she asked, amused despite herself. "Only when the subject is worth it," he replied, his voice lowering slightly as he glanced at her. The warmth in his gaze sent a pleasant shiver through her. Olivia looked away, focusing on the dusty street ahead. "Tell me about your work at the ranch," she said, seeking safer conversational ground. Nathan accepted the change of subject gracefully. "It's good work. Challenging. Montgomery runs about 2,000 head of cattle across 30,000 acres. It's my job to keep track of it all, the cattle, the hands, the equipment. Making sure everything runs smoothly." "Quite a responsibility," she observed. "Similar to yours, I'd imagine," he replied. 28 young minds to shape and guide, that's no small task." She smiled, pleased that he remembered the exact number of her students. "They're good children mostly, eager to learn." "They're fortunate to have a teacher who cares," Nathan said. "Many frontier schools get whatever failed shopkeeper or retired farmer can be convinced to take the job." "And how would you know about frontier schools, Mr. Blackett?" she asked, curious. A shadow seemed to pass over his face. "I've seen many in my travels. Education out here is uneven at best." They had reached the boarding house gate. Nathan handed her books back with careful courtesy. "I'm looking forward to tomorrow evening," he said. "As am I," she admitted. "I'll call for you at 6, if that's acceptable." "6 would be perfect," she replied. He nodded, seeming reluctant to leave. "Until tomorrow, then." "Until tomorrow," she echoed softly. As Olivia watched him stride away, she couldn't help wondering about the momentary darkness that had crossed his features when discussing frontier schools. There were depths to Nathan Blackett that she had only begun to discover, stories he hadn't yet shared. For some reason, the mystery only made him more intriguing. Friday evening arrived at last. True to Mrs. Holloway's suggestion, Olivia wore her blue silk dress with pearl buttons, her finest garment, saved from her Boston life. She arranged her hair in a more sophisticated style than usual, with a small silver comb that had belonged to her mother. At precisely 6 o'clock, Mrs. Holloway's maid announced Mr. Blackett's arrival. Olivia descended the stairs to find him waiting in the parlor, dressed in a well-tailored dark suit that transformed him from rugged rancher to gentleman. His eyes widened appreciatively when he saw her. "Miss Edwards," he said, his voice husky. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," she replied, suddenly shy under his admiring gaze. "You're quite handsome yourself." Mrs. Holloway bustled in, beaming like a proud mother. "Don't you both look wonderful? Now, Miss Edwards must be back by 10, Mr. Blackett. We maintain proper hours in this establishment." "Of course, Mrs. Holloway," he agreed solemnly. "I wouldn't dream of tarnishing Miss Edwards's reputation." The landlady nodded approvingly. "Off you go then. Enjoy your evening." Nathan offered his arm, which Olivia accepted. The simple contact, even through layers of clothing, sent a pleasant warmth through her. They walked the short distance to the Grand Hotel, a somewhat optimistic name for the two-story establishment that was nonetheless Willow Creek's finest dining venue. Inside, heads turned as they entered. Olivia spotted Thomas Jenkins dining with his parents, his expression souring when he saw them. She also noticed Mrs. Montgomery, the ranch owner's wife, sitting with several other society ladies, all watching with undisguised interest. The maitre d' led them to a table by the window, partially secluded by a decorative screen that offered a semblance of privacy while still being properly visible to chaperone the couple in the eyes of society. "Everyone is watching us," Olivia murmured after they were seated. "Let them," Nathan replied easily, "though I confess, my interest is solely in my dinner companion." The waiter brought menus and took their orders: roast beef for Nathan, trout for Olivia. When wine was offered, Nathan glanced at her questioningly. "Just water for me, thank you," she said. As a schoolteacher, she was held to the highest moral standards. Any hint of impropriety could jeopardize her position. Once they were alone again, Nathan leaned forward slightly. "I apologize if this attention makes you uncomfortable. Perhaps I should have suggested a more private venue." "No," she said quickly. "This is proper. And I'm not uncomfortable with the attention exactly. I'm just unused to it." "I find that hard to believe," he said with a warm smile. "Surely you left broken hearts across Boston?" She laughed softly. "Hardly. I was always the professor's serious daughter with her nose in a book. Not exactly the belle of any ball." "Then Boston men must be blind," Nathan replied, his eyes holding hers. The intensity of his gaze made her heart flutter. Olivia took a sip of water to compose herself. "Tell me more about yourself," she said. "You've traveled widely, it seems." "Here and there," he acknowledged. "After the war, I drifted. Worked cattle drives in Texas, did some scouting for the Army in the Dakota Territory, even tried my hand at silver mining in Colorado." "A true adventurer," Olivia observed. "What made you decide to settle into ranch management?" A shadow crossed his face, similar to the one she'd noticed the day before. "Sometimes a man gets tired of drifting," he said simply. "Starts looking for something more permanent." Their food arrived, temporarily halting the conversation. As they ate, Nathan skillfully turned the discussion to her, asking about her life in Boston, her father's work, her journey west. Olivia found herself sharing stories she hadn't told anyone in Willow Creek about her mother's early death, her father's devotion to education, the difficult decision to leave everything familiar behind after his passing. "It must have taken considerable courage," Nathan said, "for a young woman to travel alone to a frontier town." "Not courage so much as necessity," she replied. "My options in Boston were limited: become a paid companion to some wealthy widow, or marry quickly before my small inheritance ran out. Neither appealed." "So instead you chose to shape young minds in the wilderness," he said with admiration. "Remarkable." Olivia felt her cheeks warm at his praise. "And what of your family?" she asked. "You mentioned your father passed away and your mother remarried." "Yes," Nathan nodded. "My younger brother died at Gettysburg. I have a sister in Philadelphia, married to a doctor. We correspond occasionally." "I'm sorry about your brother," she said softly. "It was a long time ago," he replied, though something in his eyes suggested the wound remained fresh. "The war took many good men." "And you? Were you in the war?" she asked, remembering Mrs. Holloway's comment about him being an officer. Nathan hesitated, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I served. Yes. Union cavalry." He didn't elaborate, and something in his expression discouraged further questions on the subject. As they finished their meal, Olivia noticed Thomas Jenkins approaching their table, his gait unsteady. Nathan saw him too, his posture subtly shifting to alertness. "Miss Edwards," Thomas slurred, ignoring Nathan completely. "Didn't expect to see you here with hired help." "Mr. Jenkins," she replied coolly, "I believe you've had too much to drink." Again. Thomas swayed slightly. "My father says it's inappropriate for the school teacher to be consorting with cowboys. Sets a bad example for the children." Nathan stood slowly, his movements controlled. Mr. Jenkins, I suggest you return to your table before you embarrass yourself further. Thomas's face flushed with anger. Don't you tell me what to do, saddle-tramp. My family built this town while yours was probably still living in dirt. Several nearby diners were watching now. Olivia felt mortification creeping up her neck. Your family's achievements are irrelevant to your current behavior, Nathan said evenly. Now, please leave, before... Before what? Thomas challenged, his voice rising. Before you do what? You can't touch me. My father would have you run out of the county. Nathan remained calm, though Olivia could see tension in the set of his shoulders. Before you ruin Miss Edwards's evening with your childish display. Mr. Jenkins Sr. appeared at his son's elbow, his face tight with anger, though whether at Thomas or Nathan wasn't immediately clear. Thomas, that's enough. Come back to the table. But father? Now, Thomas. The banker's stern voice brooked no argument. With a final glare at Nathan, Thomas allowed himself to be led away. Mr. Jenkins Sr. paused, giving Nathan an appraising look before nodding slightly to Olivia. Miss Edwards, apologies for the interruption. After they departed, Nathan sat back down, his expression troubled. I'm sorry about that. It's not your fault, Olivia assured him, though her hands trembled slightly. Thomas has always had a sense of entitlement. His father has indulged him too much. Still, I've put you in an awkward position, Nathan said. The banker's family holds considerable influence here. I'm not concerned about the Jenkins family, she replied with more confidence than she felt. In truth, the banker could make life difficult for her if he chose, perhaps even pressure the school board. Nathan seemed to read her thoughts. If they cause trouble for you because of me, then that will be my concern, she interrupted firmly. I choose my own company, Mr. Blackett. I'm not beholden to Thomas Jenkins or his father. A slow smile spread across Nathan's face. No, I don't believe you are beholden to anyone, Miss Edwards. That's what I admire about you. The rest of their dinner passed without incident, though Olivia was aware of curious glances and whispers from other patrons. By the time Nathan escorted her back to the boarding house, the autumn night had turned chilly, stars brilliant in the clear sky above. At the gate, he hesitated. Despite the interruption, I hope you enjoyed the evening. I did, she said sincerely. Very much. May I call on you again? He asked. Perhaps a picnic tomorrow, if the weather holds. Somewhere away from prying eyes and Jenkins men. Olivia laughed softly. I would like that. Nathan took her gloved hand and brought it briefly to his lips, a gesture both proper and thrilling in its restraint. Until tomorrow, then. I'll come at noon. Until tomorrow, she echoed, watching as he walked away into the night. Inside, Mrs. Holloway was predictably waiting up, pretending to read in the parlor. Well? She asked as Olivia entered. How was your evening? Lovely, Olivia replied, unable to keep a smile from her face, except for a brief interruption from Thomas Jenkins. Mrs. Holloway clicked her tongue. That boy never did learn manners. What did he do? Made a scene about Mr. Blackett's profession being unsuitable company for the schoolteacher, Olivia summarized, removing her gloves. Nonsense, the landlady scoffed. Foreman at the biggest ranch in the county is a perfectly respectable position. Better than being a drunk wastrel living off Daddy's money. Olivia laughed. I quite agree, though I worry the Jenkins family might cause trouble. Mrs. Holloway waved a dismissive hand. Let them try. This town needs its schoolteacher more than it needs to please Albert Jenkins's spoiled son. She gave Olivia a knowing look. So he's calling again tomorrow? A picnic, Olivia confirmed, unable to hide her pleased expression. Moving rather quickly, isn't he? The landlady observed, though her tone held approval rather than censure. Perhaps, Olivia acknowledged, but it feels right, somehow. Mrs. Holloway nodded sagely. When it's right, You know it. My Henry and I courted for just 3 weeks before we were engaged. Everyone said we were rushing, but we had 50 good years together before he passed. Her eyes grew misty with memory. Sometimes the heart recognizes what the head is still puzzling over. Olivia considered this as she prepared for bed. Her practical nature had always guided her decisions, from her studies to her career choice to her journey west. But with Nathan, she found herself led more by feeling than logic, a new and slightly frightening experience. Yet beneath the uncertainty lay an inexplicable sense of recognition, as if she'd been waiting for him without knowing it. Ridiculous, of course. They'd known each other barely a week. Still, as she drifted toward sleep, Olivia couldn't help wondering if Mrs. Holloway's romantic notion might hold some truth after all. The next day dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for a picnic. Olivia chose a simpler dress than the previous evening, practical enough for sitting outdoors, but still flattering with its dove-gray color that complemented her eyes. She packed a book, uncertain of Nathan's plans but wanting to be prepared. He arrived promptly at noon, dressed in casual ranch clothes rather than his dinner suit, leading 2 horses, his own sturdy bay and a gentle-looking dappled mare. "I thought we might ride out to Weaver's Point," he explained. "The view of the valley is spectacular, and we'd have some privacy from the town's curious eyes." Olivia hesitated. "I haven't ridden in some time." "Daisy here is the gentlest mount at Rockingham," Nathan assured her, patting the mare's neck. "We use her to teach the children to ride. She practically puts her own riders back in the saddle if they start to slip." Still uncertain, Olivia approached the horse, who snuffled gently at her outstretched hand. "Hello, Daisy." "She likes you," Nathan observed with a smile. "Ladies usually recognize quality in each other." Olivia laughed. "Very well, though I make no promises about my horsemanship." Nathan helped her mount, his hands strong and steady at her waist. The brief contact left her feeling flustered, though she tried not to show it. He adjusted her stirrups with professional efficiency before mounting his own horse. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, gathering the reins as he'd shown her. "Lead on, Mr. Blackett." They rode at an easy pace out of town, following a trail that wound through scrubby terrain toward the foothills. Nathan had secured a picnic basket behind his saddle, and a canteen hung from his pommel. As they left the last buildings behind, Olivia felt a curious sense of freedom. "You're a natural," Nathan commented, watching her growing confidence with the mare. "Daisy is doing all the work," Olivia demurred, though she was pleased by the compliment. "A good horse responds to a good rider," he countered. "They can sense nervousness or uncertainty. Daisy trusts you already." The ride took about an hour, during which Nathan pointed out local landmarks and wildlife. He knew the territory intimately, sharing stories about particular spots where a mountain lion had been spotted last spring, which arroyo flooded during the summer rains, what indigenous plants could be used for medicine. "You've learned a lot about this area in a short time," Olivia observed. Something flickered across his face. "I've been through this territory before, years ago, when I was scouting." Before she could ask more, they reached Weaver's Point, a rocky outcropping that offered a sweeping view of the valley below. Willow Creek was visible in the distance, a small cluster of buildings beside the silvery thread of water that gave it its name. Beyond stretched the vast ranch lands, cattle appearing as tiny dots against the landscape. "It's beautiful," Olivia breathed, as Nathan helped her dismount. "I thought you might appreciate the perspective," he said, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than strictly necessary. He spread a blanket in a sheltered spot and unpacked the picnic basket: cold chicken, fresh bread, apples, and a jar of preserves. There was also a bottle of lemonade and 2 tin cups. "Mrs. Montgomery's cook prepared this," Nathan explained as they settled on the blanket. "She seemed quite pleased to be part of a romantic adventure," as she called it. Olivia felt herself blush. Word has spread to the ranch as well, then. News travels fast, he agreed with a rueful smile, though Mrs. Montgomery was supportive. Said it was about time I found a nice girl instead of, and I quote, wasting my life in that bunkhouse with those uncouth cowboys. Olivia laughed. She sounds formidable. She is, Nathan confirmed, pouring lemonade for them both. But kind-hearted. She and Mr. Montgomery have been good to me. As they ate, the conversation flowed easily between them. Nathan asked about her teaching, genuinely interested in her methods and challenges. Olivia found herself explaining her belief in practical education alongside traditional subjects, teaching the girls basic accounting alongside literature, ensuring the boys could write a proper business letter as well as calculate acreage. That's progressive thinking, Nathan remarked. Not all would agree with such a comprehensive approach, especially for frontier children. All the more reason they need it, Olivia replied passionately. These children will build the future of this territory. They deserve every advantage education can provide. Nathan watched her with admiration. Your father would be proud of you, carrying his ideals westward. The simple observation touched her deeply. I hope so, she said softly. A comfortable silence fell between them as they finished their meal. The autumn sun warmed the rocks around them, and a hawk circled lazily overhead. In the distance, the mountains stood purple against the blue sky. May I ask you something personal? Olivia ventured after a while. Of course, Nathan replied, leaning back on his elbows. Why have you been moving from place to place since the war? What are you looking for? Or perhaps running from? His expression grew serious, eyes focusing on the distant horizon. For a moment, Olivia thought he might not answer. Both, I suppose, he finally said. After the war, I found it difficult to settle. Everything seemed changed: the country, the people, myself most of all. He paused. Some men came home and picked up where they left off. I couldn't seem to do that. Because of what you'd seen? She asked gently. Nathan nodded slowly. Partly, and partly because of what I'd done. He looked at her directly now. I was a cavalry officer, as you may have heard. By the end, I commanded a company of men, sent many of them to their deaths with my orders. You were doing your duty, Olivia said. Yes, he agreed. But knowing that doesn't always help in the quiet hours before dawn when their faces come back to you. He shook his head slightly. I'm sorry. This isn't appropriate conversation for a picnic. Olivia reached out impulsively and touched his hand. It's honest conversation between friends. That's always appropriate. His fingers curled around hers, warm and strong. Is that what we are, Olivia? Friends? The way he said her name sent a shiver through her. I hope so, she replied softly. Though perhaps becoming something more? Nathan's eyes darkened. For a breathless moment, Olivia thought he might kiss her. Instead, he gently raised her hand to his lips. I would like that very much. The simple gesture, charged with restrained emotion, affected her more profoundly than any passionate embrace could have. Here was a man who respected her boundaries while making his intentions clear, a rare combination in Olivia's experience. They packed up the picnic as the afternoon waned, neither rushing yet both aware of propriety's demands. The ride back to town was peaceful, the lengthening shadows creating a private world of just the two of them before they would need to rejoin society's watchful eye. As they approached Willow Creek, Nathan broke their companionable silence. Would you allow me to escort you to church tomorrow? I would be honored, Olivia replied, her heart lightening at the thought of seeing him again so soon. When they reached the boarding house, Mrs. Holloway was conveniently gardening near the front gate, pretending not to watch as Nathan helped Olivia dismount. Thank you for a lovely afternoon, she said, reluctant for their time together to end. The pleasure was mine, he replied. Until tomorrow, then. Until tomorrow, she echoed, the phrase becoming a promise between them. As autumn deepened toward winter, Nathan and Olivia's courtship became the talk of Willow Creek. They attended church together each Sunday, took rides when weather permitted, and shared quiet evenings in Mrs. Holloway's parlor, playing chess or reading aloud while the landlady pretended to work on her embroidery, but actually served as chaperone. Thomas Jenkins had left town after the scene at the hotel, sent by his father to their business interests in Tucson, much to everyone's relief. The banker himself maintained a cool politeness toward Olivia and ignored Nathan completely, but made no overt moves against either of them. By late November, when the first dusting of snow whitened the mountains, Olivia realized she had fallen deeply in love with Nathan Blackett. Each day without seeing him felt incomplete, each moment in his company precious. They had shared so much of themselves, their histories, dreams, fears, and hopes, that she felt she knew him better after 3 months than people she'd known all her life. Yet there remained moments when something would shadow his eyes, some memory or thought he couldn't or wouldn't share. These brief glimpses of an inner darkness troubled her, not because she feared what he might be hiding, but because she wished to help him carry whatever burden he still shouldered alone. The opportunity to address this came unexpectedly one crisp December afternoon. Olivia had dismissed her students early due to threatening snow clouds, and was organizing her classroom when Nathan appeared at the door, his expression unusually serious. "Nathan," she greeted him with surprise, "I wasn't expecting you today." "I hope I'm not intruding," he said, removing his hat as he entered the schoolroom. "I needed to speak with you about something important." Her heart quickened. His tone suggested this wasn't a casual visit. "Of course. Is everything all right?" Nathan paced a few steps, betraying an uncharacteristic nervousness. "There's something I haven't told you about myself. Something you should know before." He paused. "Before our relationship progresses further." Olivia sat down at her desk, folding her hands to keep them from trembling. "You can tell me anything, Nathan." He nodded, then seemed to steel himself. "You know I was a cavalry officer during the war. What I haven't told you is what happened afterward." He drew a deep breath. "After Appomattox, I joined the army again, this time to fight in the Indian Wars." Olivia watched him carefully, saying nothing. "I was part of campaigns against the Apache, the Comanche. I followed orders, did my duty." His voice had taken on a hollow quality. "But some of those orders, some of the things we did." He shook his head. "I'm not proud of it, Olivia. Eventually, I couldn't reconcile it with my conscience anymore, so I resigned my commission." He finally met her eyes directly. "That's why I've moved around so much. Not just restlessness. There are some who consider me a deserter, though technically I resigned properly. And there are others, men I served with, who might still bear grudges because I spoke out against certain practices." Olivia absorbed this information, understanding now some of the shadows she'd glimpsed. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly. "There's more," he continued, still standing, unable to settle. "My full name is Nathan Blackett. My father was Colonel William Blackett of the Pennsylvania 7th Cavalry, a hero at Gettysburg where my brother died. After the war, I was expected to uphold the family's military tradition. When I resigned my commission, I disappointed many, brought shame to my father's name. That's why my mother rarely writes her new husband is also military, and they consider me something of a disgrace." "For following your conscience?" Olivia asked, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "For publicly questioning orders," Nathan clarified. "For testifying before a military inquiry about civilian casualties during a campaign near the Mexican border." His jaw tightened. "Women and children, Olivia, not combatants." She rose from her chair and moved to him, taking his hands in hers. "You did what was right. regardless of the cost to yourself. That shows true courage, not disgrace. Nathan looked down at their joined hands. Not everyone would see it that way. If people here knew, if the Montgomerys knew, then they would know the full measure of the man they employed, Olivia finished for him. A man of principle and honor. He searched her face. You're not disturbed by this revelation? I'm saddened that you've carried this burden alone, she replied honestly, and grateful that you trusted me enough to share it. She squeezed his hands gently. We all have parts of our past we regret, Nathan. What matters is what we choose to do with those regrets, whether we let them define us or use them to become better. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. There's one more thing I need to tell you, he said, his voice softer now. The reason I'm sharing all this today. Yes? She prompted when he hesitated. Nathan took a deep breath. Olivia Edwards, I love you. I have since that first night when I saw you standing alone at that barn dance. I crossed that room and took your hand, and somehow knew my wandering days were over. His eyes held hers, vulnerable yet certain. I want to build a life with you, if you'll have me. Joy welled up in Olivia's heart, so intense it almost felt like pain. Nathan Blackett, I love you too, she whispered. And yes, I'll build that life with you. His face transformed with happiness. Slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she wished, he leaned down and kissed her their first kiss, sweet and tender and full of promise. When they parted, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. I don't have much to offer yet, he said. The foreman's position provides a decent salary, but I don't need wealth, Olivia interrupted. Just you. He smiled, the shadows in his eyes replaced by light. Then you shall have me, for as long as you'll keep me. Forever then, she replied simply. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church where they had attended services together, with Mrs. Holloway weeping happily in the front pew, and Mr. and Mrs. Montgomery beaming with approval from the second row. The entire town turned out for the celebration afterward, even Mr. Jenkins nodding civilly as he presented them with a surprisingly generous gift. Nathan had secured a small house on the edge of town close enough for Olivia to continue teaching, but with enough land for the horses they both loved. As he carried her over the threshold that evening, they both felt the rightness of their union, forged in honesty and strengthened by shared values. Welcome home, Mrs. Blackett, Nathan murmured against her hair. Home, Olivia repeated, savoring the word and all it now meant. No longer just a place, but a person, a shared life, a future waiting to unfold. And to think it had all begun because she was left alone at a barn dance, and a cowboy had crossed the room and taken her hand. 5 years later, Olivia stood on the porch of their expanded home, watching as Nathan taught their 3-year-old son William to sit on a gentle pony. Their daughter Emily, just a year old, gurgled happily in her arms. The rocking M Ranch spread before them, no longer the Montgomerys' property, but their own, purchased last year when the older couple decided to retire to San Francisco. The transition from foreman to owner had been challenging but rewarding. Nathan's military and leadership experience served him well in running the operation, while Olivia had taken her organizational skills from the classroom to the ranch's books, proving herself an adept business partner as well as wife. She had continued teaching until William's birth, training her replacement, a young woman from back east, not unlike herself 5 years earlier. Now her teaching was focused on their children and the occasional lesson for the ranch hands who wanted to improve their reading or arithmetic. Look, Mama, William called excitedly as the pony took a few steps with Nathan's guidance. I'm riding like Papa. I see you, sweetheart, she called back. You're doing wonderfully. Nathan glanced up at her, his smile as warm and affecting as it had been that first night. 5 years of marriage had only deepened their connection, Each challenge faced together, strengthening their bond. There had been difficulties, of course. Nathan's past had caught up with them once, in the form of a former military colleague passing through who recognized him and made veiled threats. But the community, knowing Nathan's character through his actions rather than rumors, had stood firmly behind them. Even the Jenkins family had come around eventually, especially after Nathan helped save their bank during a financial crisis that swept through the territory. Thomas, surprisingly, had returned from Tucson a changed man humbled by failure and ready to work honestly in his father's business. He had apologized to them both and now managed the bank's branch in the neighboring town, occasionally joining them for dinner with his new wife. As Nathan lifted William from the pony and set him on his shoulders, carrying him back toward the house, Olivia felt a profound contentment. From that moment of connection on the barn dance floor to this peaceful domestic scene, their journey had been one of growing love and mutual respect. "What has you smiling so beautifully, Mrs. Blackett?" Nathan asked as he reached the porch, setting William down to run inside for his promised cookie. "Just counting my blessings," she replied, shifting Emily to her other arm. Nathan took the baby from her, kissing the top of the child's head before leaning in to kiss his wife. "Any particular blessing in mind?" "I was thinking about beginnings," Olivia said, slipping her arm around his waist as they followed William inside. "How the most important chapter of my life started because I was abandoned at a dance, and a handsome cowboy crossed the room to rescue me." Nathan laughed softly. "As I recall, you didn't need rescuing. You were managing quite well on your own." "Perhaps," she conceded, "but I'm rather glad you came to my aid anyway." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch still sending the same thrill through her as it had that first night. "Best decision I ever made, crossing that room to you." "And taking my hand," she reminded him. "And taking your hand," he agreed, doing exactly that as they stepped over the threshold together, into the home and life they had built from that single, decisive moment of connection. Outside, the sun set over the mountains, painting the ranch in gold and amber hues. Inside, laughter and love filled the rooms as a family forged from a chance meeting at a barn dance celebrated another day of the life they had created together, one step, one day, one year at a time.